I never thought I'd see the day when my own flesh and blood would betray me like this. That rubber egg sitting on my kitchen table, that was my nephew's idea of a joke after he took control of my $4 million chicken farm, my life's work. 40 years I spent building that operation from nothing, waking before dawn, working through blizzards and heat waves alike. My hands, permanently calloused from decades of labor, now empty. It started when Kevin, my brother's boy, showed up at my door 3 years ago. "Uncle Frank," he said, "I want to learn the business from the ground up." Said he was tired of corporate life in Chicago, wanted to get back to his rural roots. I was alone since Martha passed, no kids of my own. The farm was getting to be too much for me at my age. So I welcomed him in, taught him everything I knew. The roosters were crowing that morning when I signed those papers, transferring operational control to him while I recovered from my hip surgery. 6 months later, I was locked out of my own property, served with papers claiming I was mentally unfit to make business decisions. The rubber egg came in a fancy gift box with a note, "Thanks for the golden goose, old man." But what Kevin didn't know was that I still had one card left to play, and it would change everything. The Harmon family has been part of Greene County, Missouri since before the Civil War. My grandfather started with just 20 hens in 1918, selling eggs door to door in Springfield. My father expanded to 300 birds by the time I was born in 1957. We weren't rich, but we were respected, known for fair dealing and quality product. Harmon eggs don't break in the box, folks would say. Growing up on the farm wasn't easy. My father, Earl, was a hard man, product of the Depression and WW2. Chickens don't care if you're tired, sick, or sad, he'd say. They need tending every day, no exceptions. By age 10, I was collecting eggs before school, cleaning coops after. My hands were perpetually stained with chicken feed and dirt, while the town kids had clean fingernails and time for baseball. My older brother Dale was different, smart as a whip, but allergic to hard work. When I was 12, Dad caught Dale stealing from the egg money to buy baseball cards. Instead of punishing him, Dad made me do Dale's chores for a month. "Frank's reliable," he said, right in front of both of us. "Someone's got to make up for your brother's shortcomings." Dale left for college at 18 and barely looked back, settling in Chicago with his wife Helen. Their son Kevin was born in 1990. I'd see them at Christmas sometimes, Thanksgiving if we were lucky. Kevin was a city kid through and through, always on some electronic gadget, complaining about the farm smell when they visited. But Martha, bless her heart, would make him special pancakes shaped like chickens. "You've got to connect with the next generation," she'd tell me. When Martha got sick in 2015, I poured everything into her care. The farm kept us afloat financially. By then, Harmon Family Farms was supplying organic, free-range eggs to half the state, with contracts with 3 major grocery chains. We'd expanded to a state-of-the-art operation with 20,000 birds, 40 employees, and a processing facility that was the envy of the region. But I let the paperwork slide. Martha was my priority. After she passed in 2018, I threw myself into one final project, a special breeding program for a heritage chicken variety that was nearly extinct. The Ozark Blue, with its distinctive pale blue eggs, had been part of local farming tradition for generations, but had nearly disappeared due to commercial pressures. I saw it as my legacy, something uniquely ours that connected back to the region's history. Dale called me that Christmas, first time in years. Said Kevin was having a crisis, divorced at 32, hated his marketing job. "He needs a fresh start, Frank. He's always admired you, you know." I doubted that last part, but family is family. When Kevin showed up on a rainy April morning in 2022, duffel bag in hand and designer shoes already muddy, I offered him the guest room Martha had always kept ready. "I want to learn everything, Uncle Frank," he said, looking around at the farmhouse with what I mistook for appreciation. "I've been thinking a lot about legacy lately, about what matters." He picked up the framed photo of Martha and me at the county fair, where our eggs had won blue ribbons 17 years running. "I want to be part of something real." I never suspected his real interest was in the farm's bottom line, or that he'd already been talking to Dale about their inheritance. My hip had been giving me trouble for years. Decades of physical labor take their toll. By summer 2023, Kevin had been with me for over a year, and I'll admit, he'd surprised me. He'd thrown himself into the work, learning the operation from egg collection to distribution. He'd modernized our ordering system, created a social media presence that had influencers from Kansas City driving down to tour our authentic heritage farm experience. Revenue was up 22%. "You should get that hip taken care of, Uncle Frank," Kevin would say, massaging his own shoulders after a day of work. "I can handle things here for a few weeks." I'd always brush him off. Who takes time off when there are chickens to tend? But the pain was getting worse. Some mornings I could barely make it down the stairs. Then came the Missouri Organic Farmers Association annual banquet last August. Kevin insisted we attend, said it was important for networking. He'd nominated Harmon Family Farms for a sustainability award, and to my surprise, we won. As I limped up to accept it, Kevin was right beside me, arms supportively around my shoulders. "My Uncle Frank built this operation through grit and vision," he told the crowd of 300 farmers, distributors, and agriculture officials. "And now we're ensuring that legacy continues for generations to come." The applause was thunderous. I felt a pride I hadn't experienced since Martha was alive. Dr. Abernathy, our family doctor for 30 years, was at our table. "Frank, you're a stubborn old coot," he said after the ceremony. "That hip replacement can't wait any longer. Schedule it for next month or I'm calling in reinforcements." He nodded meaningfully toward Kevin, who grinned. "He's right, Uncle Frank," Kevin said on the drive home, the award sitting between us. "You deserve to enjoy the fruits of your labor without pain. I've learned enough to keep things running, trust me." And so I did. I scheduled the surgery for September 15th. The weeks leading up to it were a flurry of preparation. Kevin insisted I create a medical power of attorney just in case of complications. He brought a notary to the farm, had all the paperwork ready. I signed it without reading every page, a mistake I'd regret bitterly. What I didn't know was that Kevin had been meeting with lawyers in Springfield, that he'd been documenting every time I forgot something minor or made a small error in the books, that he'd been taking photos of my prescription medications and sending them to Dale with misleading explanations about my mental state. The surgery went well. I spent 3 days in the hospital, then 2 weeks at Cedar Ridge Rehabilitation Center. Kevin visited daily, always with updates about the farm. "Everything's running smoothly," he'd assure me. "Just focus on getting better." I was supposed to stay at Cedar Ridge for another week, but I was restless. The Ozark Blues were starting their fall laying season, and I wanted to see the results of our breeding program. I called Hank Johnson, my foreman of 20 years, to pick me up, but he sounded strange on the phone. "Mr. Harmon, I think you should talk to Kevin first," he said hesitantly. "Nonsense. Come get me at 2 o'clock, I insisted. When I arrived at the farm, unfamiliar cars filled the parking area. A security guard I'd never seen before stopped us at the gate. "I need to check with management," he said, radioing someone. Kevin emerged from the office building, his face a mask of concern that didn't reach his eyes. "Uncle Frank, you're not supposed to be out of rehab yet." He hurried toward me, glancing nervously at the men in suits emerging behind him. "What's going on here?" I demanded, noting the company logo on one of the parked vehicles, Midwest Poultry Enterprises.
"We need to talk," Kevin said, steering me toward his car rather than the farmhouse. "There have been some changes while you were recovering." In that moment, seeing the strange suits walking around my property, the unfamiliar guard, and the way Hank couldn't meet my eyes, I felt the first real chill of betrayal. Something was very wrong at Harmon Family Farms. "Changes?" I repeated, planting my feet despite my still healing hip. "What kind of changes happen in 2 weeks that require security guards I've never seen before?" Kevin's smile tightened. "Let's not do this here, Uncle Frank. Let's go get some coffee in town." "This is my farm. We'll talk here." I turned to Hank. "What's going on?" Hank looked at the ground. "I'm sorry, Mr. Harmon.
I tried to call you yesterday, but they said you couldn't take calls." One of the suits approached, a woman in her 40s with a tablet in hand. "Mr. Harmon, I'm Patricia Wilcox, COO of Midwest Poultry Enterprises. We're very excited about our new partnership with Harmon Family Farms." "Partnership?" I looked from her to Kevin. "There is no partnership. This is a family operation." Kevin stepped forward. "Uncle Frank, I've been trying to bring you into the 21st century for a year now. Midwest is offering us distribution in 14 states. They're taking a controlling interest, but keeping our brand name. It's a great deal." "A deal I never agreed to," I said, my voice rising. Patricia looked uncomfortable. "Mr. Harmon, we have all the signed paperwork. The ownership transfer was completed yesterday." The world seemed to tilt. "That's impossible. I never signed anything." Kevin pulled me aside, lowering his voice. "You're confused, Uncle Frank. The doctor said this might happen after anesthesia in patients your age. You signed the medical power of attorney. I've been legally making decisions while you recover." "Temporary medical decisions," I hissed, "not selling my farm." "The geriatric specialist agreed that your cognitive assessment indicated you needed assistance with complex financial matters," Kevin said smoothly. "It's all documented. I'm just protecting the family legacy." Something in me snapped. Decades of hard work, the land that had been in my family for generations, the breeding program that was my final gift to the industry. All of it stolen by my brother's son while I was laid up in a hospital bed. "Everyone, stop what you're doing!" I bellowed, my voice carrying across the yard like it did when I called workers in from the fields. Heads turned. "This farm is not for sale. It has not been sold. Whatever papers you think you have are fraudulent." Patricia stepped back, alarm crossing her face. "Mr. Riordan, you assured us." "He assured you of something he had no right to offer," I cut in. "Hank, call Sheriff Daniels, now." Kevin's face darkened. "Don't embarrass yourself, Uncle Frank. The papers are legitimate. I have power of attorney. And the psychiatric evaluation clearly states—" "What psychiatric evaluation?" I demanded. "The one from Dr. Mercer last month. You don't remember? That's exactly the problem." I'd never seen a Dr. Mercer in my life. The commotion had drawn a crowd, workers I'd known for years, delivery drivers, even some of the suits from Midwest. Kevin realized he was losing control of the narrative. "Uncle Frank is still recovering," he announced loudly. "The medications affect his memory. Let's get you back to Cedar Ridge," he said, taking my arm. I jerked away. "I'm not going anywhere. This is my farm, my life's work." Kevin's pleasant mask finally slipped. "Your life's work? You mean the outdated operation I've spent a year modernizing? The heritage breed program that loses money? Midwest is paying $4.2 million, and they're keeping the employees. Be grateful." In that moment, I saw him clearly, not as my brother's son, but as a stranger who had calculated every move, who had seen an old man and a valuable property, nothing more. "You won't get away with this," I said quietly. He leaned in, voice low enough that only I could hear. "I already have. By the time you fight this in court, if you even can, the integration with Midwest will be complete. Face it, old man, you lost."
Sheriff Daniels arrived 15 minutes later, but he couldn't do much. It was a civil matter, he said. The paperwork seemed in order. I'd need to get a lawyer. As Kevin led the Midwest executives toward the breeding barn to show them the operation, he turned back to me with a smirk that only I could see. "Go back to rehab, Uncle Frank. I'll have your things sent over from the house." I was being erased from my own life, standing on land my family had worked for generations, surrounded by people who didn't know who to believe. I spent that night at Hank's place, too devastated to speak much. His wife Mary made up their spare room and kept the coffee coming while I made calls. My old friend Gerald Thompson, who'd retired from his law practice 5 years earlier, came over immediately. "This stinks to high heaven, Frank," Gerald said, reviewing the power of attorney document. "Medical POA shouldn't cover business sales, but Kevin's added language here, and here's the problem: your signature on additional pages giving broader authority." "I never signed those pages," I insisted. "I believe you, but proving it will be tough." Gerald sighed. "And this psychiatric evaluation from a Dr. Mercer in Kansas City?"
Ever meet him? Never heard of him until today. "We'll need to move fast," Gerald said. "I'll call my old partner first thing tomorrow." But Kevin had been thorough. When we arrived at the law office the next morning, we discovered he'd already filed restraining orders preventing me from harassing farm employees or interfering with business operations. The bank accounts were frozen pending resolution of the competency issue. Word spread quickly through the county. By afternoon, my phone was ringing non-stop. Neighbors, church members, business associates, all asking what they could do. Among them was Maggie Sullivan, who ran the local diner. Her daughter worked at Cedar Ridge Rehabilitation Center. "Frank, Melissa says your nephew was restricting your calls at Cedar Ridge, telling them you were having episodes of confusion and shouldn't be disturbed. She thought it was strange because you seemed sharp as a tack when she checked your vitals." Another piece of the puzzle. Kevin had been isolating me, controlling information flow. Then came the package, delivered to Hank's house that evening. A fancy gift box containing a single rubber egg and that cruel note: "Thanks for the golden goose, old man." I stared at that rubber egg for a long time. It wasn't just mockery. It was a message that everything I'd built was fake to him, worthless except for its cash value. But as I turned it over in my hands, something else occurred to me. Something Kevin couldn't know. The next morning, I asked Gerald to arrange a meeting with the Midwest poultry executives, without Kevin. Initially, they refused, but when Gerald mentioned potential fraud and a very public lawsuit that would tarnish their acquisition, they agreed. Patricia Wilcox and 2 other executives met us at Gerald's office. "Mr. Harmon," she began formally, "we entered this transaction in good faith." "I'm sure you did," I replied, "but my nephew had no authority to sell, and there's something you should know before this goes any further." I placed a file on the table, records of the Ozark Blue breeding program, including recent lab tests. "The Ozark Blue breeding stock represents 15% of Harmon Farms' value in your acquisition, correct?" Patricia nodded cautiously. "What Kevin doesn't know, what no one knows except my veterinarian and me, is that last spring we discovered a genetic anomaly in the flock. The Ozark Blues have developed a natural immunity to avian influenza variant H7N9. The executives exchanged glances. H7N9 had devastated poultry farms across 3 states last year. "We've kept it quiet while conducting more tests, but these birds could revolutionize the industry through selective breeding. Their true value isn't in their blue eggs, it's in their genetics. The University of Missouri's Agriculture Department has verified our findings." I slid the lab reports across the table. "This is worth far more than $4.2 million to the right buyer. But there's a catch. The immunity trait is strongest in the original bloodline, which only I can identify.
The birds look identical to the untrained eye. It wasn't a bluff. The H7N9 resistance was real, something I'd discovered accidentally and had been quietly documenting. I'd planned to announce it next year after more comprehensive studies. Patricia studied the reports, then made a call to their company veterinarian, stepping outside for privacy. When she returned, her demeanor had changed completely. "Mr. Harmon, it seems we need to reevaluate our position." Within 48 hours, Midwest had withdrawn from the deal, citing irregularities in the acquisition process. They couldn't risk the publicity of a fraud case, especially with the potential value of the Ozark Blues at stake. Kevin was furious. He showed up at Hank's house, threatening lawsuits of his own, until Sheriff Daniels personally escorted him off the property with a warning about harassment charges. The legal battle took months. Dr. Mercer, when deposed, admitted he'd never met me. Kevin had provided him with assessment materials and recordings that were likely manipulated. The broader power of attorney documents showed evidence of page substitution after my signature. By spring, the courts had voided Kevin's actions and restored my ownership. The restraining order was now against him, barring him from coming within 500 feet of me or the farm. Dale called once during this time. "Frank, I had no idea what Kevin was planning," he claimed. "He told us you were declining rapidly, that he was helping you transition to assisted living." I wasn't sure I believed him, but it didn't matter anymore. Some family ties can't be repaired. The Ozark Blues became my salvation in more ways than one.
The breeding program expanded with university partnership, developing chicken lines with enhanced disease resistance. Harmon Family Farms transformed into a research and development center as much as a commercial operation. I didn't want to run it alone anymore, though. Hank Johnson, who had stood by me through everything, became my business partner. His daughter Jenny, just finishing her veterinary degree, joined as our chief of animal health. We created an employee profit-sharing program, ensuring that the farm's success would benefit everyone who contributed to it. As for the rubber egg, I keep it on my desk as a reminder. A reminder that what looks worthless to one person might contain unexpected value to another who knows where to look. Just like those ordinary-looking blue egg chickens that carried a genetic gold mine no one suspected. Looking back now, 2 years after Kevin's betrayal, I realize that what he tried to steal wasn't just land and chickens. It was the meaning I'd created through decades of work. But in trying to take everything, he inadvertently gave me something precious, a second chapter I never expected. The Harmon Family Farms Research Institute now partners with 3 universities. Our breeding techniques have helped small farms across the country strengthen their flocks against disease. And I found a new family in the people who stood by me, not bound by blood, but by something stronger, loyalty and shared purpose. That rubber egg still sits on my desk. Sometimes visitors ask about it, and I tell them my story. Not everyone who calls you family will act like it, and not everyone who stands with you in crisis shares your DNA. The true value of what we build isn't always visible on the surface. If you've ever been betrayed by someone you trusted, know that it doesn't have to be the end of your story. Sometimes it's just the unexpected beginning of a better one. If you found something valuable in my experience, please hit that subscribe button and share this video with someone who might need to hear it. And remember, real wealth isn't what others can take from you, it's what you create that outlasts you.